Howdy, I'm Nick from Fouch Paddock Off Grid. We're here today at the Grass-fed Homestead hosted by Dan Ohmann. He is successfully employing a paddock shift system and has several acres of his property with awesome lush grass, and he is feeding sheep, he's feeding chicken and pigs, and is really having a lot of success at raising meat using this method. And it is something that we have heard about. We certainly heard about it in our permaculture design course, and have thought about trying to implement something like this on our homestead on a much smaller scale, but still some of the same methodology we want to take home with us. And this is the place to learn it, because he's killing it.
So again, it's for the benefit of the sheep and the rejuvenation of the landscape. So every day we rotate the sheep to a new paddock. And if you see, we have a fence behind us this way. This is where they were. And you can probably see the way the grass looks over here versus how it looks back here. So there's a fence behind us, there's a fence in front of us, and that gives us the paddock that they're in now. Of course, there's fencing on either side this way. And what I do is I have one more fence set up on the other side. It's electric poly netting, and I just basically open one little section and call the sheep, and they see the grass and they go flooding in there. And once the sheep are in there, I break down this fence, this back fence, since they're no longer in here, and I leapfrog it ahead and create a new paddock for the next day. And I just keep repeating that cycle. The goal is to keep the sheep moving, one, so they're getting fresh forage every day, but two, it breaks up the parasite cycle and they're not getting exposed to parasite. If I were to leave them in a spot for too long, the parasites can hatch, crawl up the grass blade, the sheep eats it, and then gets infested with parasites, and that cycle just keeps continuing. So if we're moving them, the parasite will hatch, crawl up the blade of grass, and doesn't get eaten because the sheep aren't there anymore, and it dies, and the whole cycle gets broken that way. So we don't want sheep coming back to the same spot. Absolute minimum for 28 days. That's the life cycle of the parasite. That's not really comfortable enough for me. I like a little more buffer zone. So we're actually going to give a 5 to 6 week window before bringing the sheep back. So that's for the sheep health. There's also another reason. It's for the land. It's also for the health of the land. If we give the land ample time to rest, it can rejuvenate, grow back, and will come back better. The sheep come through, they eat it down, but they're also depositing manure and urine into the soil, giving it a nitrogen and fertility boost. It's going to come back stronger, and 6 weeks later, the sheep are going to be back. Sheep are going to be back around to have a nice salad buffet. So again, it's for the benefit of the sheep and the rejuvenation of the landscape.
He is able to shift animals every single day. It's amazing to see how his sheep completely mow one of the paddocks in a single day. But then he's able to move them onto fresh grass. They eat down the plants, and the roots have an equal die-off under the soil. So the roots dying off, what that does, as far as I understand, is it leaves behind some organic matter. It also, the roots have aerated the soil by plunging deep and breaking apart the soil. So it's essentially injecting compost into the deepest parts of the soil, which helps the plant life and helps those plants that have been eaten down grow back even stronger and make way for new species to move in, and just generally increase the biodiversity within the soil.
If we were to leave the sheep in one place, just like I said earlier, we would have the parasite issues, but also what happens is they overgraze if they're left in one space too long, and will actually deplete the quality of the pasture. They'll eat too much of the plant. It starts to grow back. As soon as it starts to grow back, the sheep will eat it again before it has a chance to really come back. And then the more that happens, the weaker and weaker it gets and eventually dies. So you lose all your high quality forage that way. And what's left are the weeds that the sheep didn't want. And that's how you ruin a pasture. So if you keep the sheep moving, those plants have plenty of time to come back in good health and maintain their roots. Every time the plants get eaten, they slough off an equal amount of the root in the soil, which leads to their weakness if they're eaten too much, but it also leads to building soil. It builds organic matter in the soil. When those roots slough off, they decompose, compost into the ground, and you're building soil life that way. So it's good and healthy to pulse them through real quick, but you don't want to leave them too long. So let's move them. Girls, come on.
The ground that he's moving the sheep onto is really lush. A lot of different things growing there. Tall grasses, a lot of things happening in the soil. I can see that the sheep are thriving from what I know. We were fed an amazing dinner of the product that's being grown on the land. And we're even able to see, you know, where he started them at the beginning of the year, and that's growing back to be healthy and tall again as well. You know, there's an equation to work out of animals to space. There's a ratio there, and it seems like he has it really well balanced to where he's not overgrazing, and you know, even the land the paddock that they shift off of, it's not mowed down to dirt. So there's enough there to rejuvenate itself.
Yes.
They ate this down.
I moved them.
Day.
I moved them late yesterday morning. So it's been just over 24 hours, like 30 hours. I waited longer so you guys could be here for the move.
Gotcha.
Normally I'd move them 11 a.m., somewhere around there. Sometimes a little bit later, just depends on how the grass is looking. And sometimes, you know, the way I set up the fencing, it's a little bit longer or wider paddock, so I'll give them a little bit more time in it. But my goal this year was to move them every day.
Wow.
Pulse them through every day, because that's really the best case scenario you can do with the moving animals. Some people will do, you know, leave them 5 days. Obviously they need more area if you're going to do that.
Sure, yeah.
But again, I really think you maximize the pasture rejuvenation, you maximize the health of the sheep, and you mitigate all your problems by moving them every day.
Right.
Yes, it's a little bit more work, but the way I have it set up now, all I need to do to get ready for tomorrow is take that fence and move it over there. And we're talking 15 minutes.
Right, you're just jumping each one.
Leapfrogging it, yep.
And so how long before they get back on this?
So
roughly.
That's kind of why this one's narrower than this one. I was looking at it and realizing, okay, they're gonna get around too soon. Basically, the minimum, absolute minimum, is 30 days before you want them to come back on the same piece. Yeah. Ideally, 5 to 6 weeks.
It could grow up just like this in that amount of time.
Absolutely, and I will show you where they were about 3 weeks ago, and you'll see what the grass looks like there now. It looks a lot like this, except it's darker green.
Right.
So
how far behind are the chickens from? So because you move the chickens onto the same ground some period of time
every
after.
Day. Yeah. So the sheep haven't gotten to where the chickens are yet.
Oh, okay.
They're chasing them, and it just takes them. It's just taking them a little longer because I had the sheep in that corral where you see the other sheep.
Okay.
I was explaining to Esther earlier about Fiji needing some rehab because of the nursing. She was losing condition and all that. So that's why they're weaning over there. But essentially, I had the sheep on the other side of that corral, and I was pulsing them on all of that side of the property. And it was 4 days ago now. I moved them all the way to that paddock down there, and you see where it's eaten out in the corner there.
Sure.
And so they've been moving across. You can see where I didn't have them because I moved them to that tree, like I was telling you. When it was really hot, they needed that shade, so I moved them over there. So they just haven't made it to that side yet.
Gotcha.
That middle section. So if you look at it, I'm going to start doing a little bit narrower of a paddock because they're going to catch up too soon.
Yeah.
I'm going to run out of grass.
Right.
So I'm going to squeeze it
You're
down a little
rationing
bit.
your surface area.
I was over-serving them a little bit at first just because I was excited, but now I'm having
that it was working. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this system this year. I really think that this way is a big improvement from the way I was doing it last year, and really the daily maintenance, it's not bad. Like we're talking 15-20 minutes to move the fencing and get everything moved and set up, and if you think about in the grand scheme of things, that's not bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The animals seem really well adjusted to their keepers. You know, he's able to call them with a whistle. The kids are able to be in there and not have a problem. He uses electric fences, shiftable electric fences, but they're so well trained to that and so happy within their paddocks that I've not seen an attempted escape at any point. So if they're happy being right where he puts them, then that's a great sign that they're well taken care of.
Do I have a try sniff this? I'm trying. Good. You told me. Hey, do I have a try sniff this?
Dan lives on 10 acres of essentially flat pasture. We live on 3 acres of wooded mountain. So they're pretty different environments, but the methodology, I think, will transfer over in some way. The sheep are doing very well here because of the species that they have to feed off of. Probably wouldn't be exactly transferable to our land, but the same methodology applies to different animals. So we're interested in pigs that do well in the forested environment and do well with the species that we have to feed off of there. Even if we were just to employ this with chickens, you know, if we were to do meat birds again, you know, this year when we get home, we would really benefit from the methodology that we've picked up here in order to not degrade the ground to the extent that we have in the past. I think that just the general idea of the plants feeding the animals and the animals feeding the plants, if you can keep that in mind, I think it's applicable in a lot of different situations. So there's definitely more study that we have to do and some careful thought about how we use our land. And I think as we do our work, you know, figuring out what our goals are on our land, I think that this will definitely work its way in. But we're hesitant to just go home and implement something. That's exactly why we went out and are studying. We're trying to see how other people do it so that we can take a slow and steady and deliberate course rather than just jumping into things. So if you want to see what Dan's doing out here, he does a lot of videos on his animals. Check him out at the Grass-fed Homestead. I recommend it.
We get to keep. Oh, here comes Daisy. She really wants your attention, Daniel. She's such a show off. She was bottle fed. She thinks she's a bucking bronco.
Yeah, she leaps in the air and kicks, and
I'm impressed. Look at Sage. What is she doing?
there.
Oh my.
You're having a play date.
Yeah, play date.